In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. What's up, everybody? This is Daryl Bonilla. And as some of you know, or none of you might know, because who cares what a lowly old actor comedian in Hawaii thinks, but I'm a big fan of the Green Lantern. Green Lantern is without question my favorite superhero. It's the one comic book I read and continue to read and collect about 90% of the run. So I wanted to talk real quick about my top five Green Lanterns of all time. And of course, you guys are all welcome to let me know who your top five are. And the thing about Green Lantern is, depending on when you started reading it, there can either be a few Green Lanterns or a gazillion Green Lanterns. Here we go with Daryl Bonilla's top five Green Lanterns of all time. All right, at number five, I've got somebody who's going to get pretty well known in the mainstream media with the new Superman movie that came out, and that's my man Guy Gardner right here. I know he looks a little different with the bowl cut look, which was his look for a specific period of time in the comics when it was a little bit more, he was a little bit more comedic, a little bit more of the butt of a lot of jokes, a little bit more abrasive. And he's always been that kind of a alpha male personality of like the second place Green Lantern to Hal Jordan. We had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, but always willing to fight. Now, this Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, is the definition of no fear. This guy will go into any fight with anybody. And here's the thing about Guy Gardner a lot of times too, is he has a ring, but would rather not use it sometimes in a lot of fights. And I'm like, you got the ring, use it. Know him infamously from the One Punch stuff with Batman and that run. But I like to remember the Guy Gardner who kind of went at it with Hal Jordan early on during the Core Wars. The Guy Gardner who kind of became like a mentor to Kyle Rayner when he first was coming up, became a pair, like a little buddy cop stuff for a while. And I wish they did more with that because that had a lot of potential. Definitely Guy Gardner. He's a fun Green Lantern. He's sometimes an unconventional Green Lantern. People either love him or they hate him. I've always enjoyed him. I hear he's appearing in the TV series Lanterns. So hopefully, people will now go back to the comics and read up and learn the history of Guy Gardner, who is my number five Green Lantern. Now, at number four, I have the OG original Green Lantern, Alan Scott. So now a lot of people might think of Hal Jordan as the original, the first mainstream Green Lantern in the comic books, but it was actually Alan Scott who started it all. His origin is completely different than the modern day Green Lanterns, which is a more sci-fi approach of space cops. He was the Green Lantern for a while. He was a Justice Society. And then later on, when they tried to reinvent the guys, especially when Kyle Rayner came up and he was the only Green Lantern in the comics for a specific amount of time, a lot of the surviving Green Lanterns got rebranded, and he got rebranded as Sentinel. For me, you got to always respect the original and where everything came from, and it all started with this man right here, Alan Scott. At number three, I got John Stewart, and he's probably probably going to be a lot of people's top picks as well because of the notoriety from appearing in the Justice League animated series of being that kind of no nonsense military marine. But I've always enjoyed John Stewart as the young kind of apprentice or rookie that's learning. He kind of came in as a substitute. There was a lot of times when they kind of wrote Hal Jordan off for a bit and they would bring in somebody else. And John Stewart was probably the most well-known of the replacements that came in, and he kind of created his own niche in the comics. And then he kind of wasn't used as often. He got rebranded with the Dark Stars, reemerged as a Green Lantern. And then the Justice League animated series came out, and at the time they decided to go with John Stewart as the Green Lantern. And from there they made the changes in the comics where he ended up becoming the Green Lantern of the Justice League. And John Stewart's always been a really, really solid character. In any interpretation of his character, he's always been a man of integrity. Also been one of those guys who always stands his ground, and if he believes in something, he's gonna stand his ground against anybody. I'm excited to see how he's in live action. I know we almost got him Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I thought that would have been really cool to see him in that. but we're gonna get to see him in Lanterns. Yeah, John Stewart, my number three on my list of top GLs of all time. There he is, my number two on the list, who's gonna probably be a lot of people's number ones, and I wouldn't even fault anybody for putting this man number one, and that's Hal Jordan. Is the most famous of all the Green Lanterns. He's the one that most people know as Green Lantern. I know for me, he was my first favorite Green Lantern. He was the reason Green Lantern was and is my favorite character of all time. My introduction to Green Lantern wasn't in the comics. It was on an amazing cartoon growing up called Super Friends. And I saw this guy and I saw what he could do and I saw his power and I saw the ring and I was like, I like this character and I wanted to know more about him. And then I went and bought the comics, been collecting it ever since. But Hal Jordan was my favorite. I always felt like he was Clark Kent with a ring, especially in his early persona. Like he was basically like a Superman, a really, really stand-up guy who does the right thing, no fear, amazing willpower. And I was always like, he's on par with Superman in terms of power and stature, like that natural born leader. So Hal Jordan was always my favorite until my number one came along. But it was always Hal Jordan, and still he's still my favorite. So I still always anytime there's Hal Jordan. So same with Lanterns coming out, I'm excited to see Hal Jordan. I think Kyle Chandler is an amazing actor, and I'm looking forward to seeing his take on Hal Jordan. I think he's going to do a really good job with it. So I'm very optimistic that we're going to get a really, really, really good show. Fingers crossed. And I gotta say, it's controversial, but I loved when he was Parallax. His costume was amazing, and I liked the route that I thought they were going in, which was like a Magneto type of persona, where he's looked at as a villain, but in his mind, he's doing the right thing, and he's trying to make things right. Hal Jordan, my number two. And for those people who know me really well, it's no secret that my number one is Kyle Rayner. That's right. My favorite Green Lantern. That's never going to change. They can keep introducing a gazillion more Green Lanterns. He will still remain my favorite Green Lantern. Like I said, I grew up on Hal, and then Kyle Rayner came aboard. And it was around that time we had that controversial thing with Parallax and Hal Jordan kind of losing his mind and trying to reshape the world and then destroying the Green Lanterns, the Central Power Battery and the Guardians and wiping them all out, leaving just one remnant of a ring, and it ends up in the hands of this young artist in an alley, and it's Kyle Rayner. And I think probably the reason that he resonated with me was because I got to experience his debut and watch him grow. So as a reader, I'm growing and learning just like he is along the way. His constructs he was making was amazing. And so as a reader of a comic book where it's very visual, seeing all that kind of imagination, enjoyed his personality. He wasn't a natural born superhero. He had to kind of grow into the role a little bit of a Peter Parker-ish kind of vibe where he's a little bit more talkative, a little bit more comedic, pretty laid back, but genuinely a good guy. And he always wants to do good. And that's one thing that's kind of, especially in the 90s, where everything was kind of edgy and everybody was becoming anti-heroes and stuff like that. It was kind of refreshing again to see this young kid who is just trying to do his best with nobody there to train him, nobody there to really guide him. He had one guardian, but he would pop in and out, Ganthet and stuff like that. To watch him kind of evolve, as a Green Lantern, and then he with the power and become, all these different other personas as well when he started mastering the different rings and all this kind of stuff. So Kyle Rayner has always been my favorite character. He's kind of been MIA as of late, so I'm hoping that changes. I would love to see more of him in the forefront. And I hope I get more chances to kind of read about the adventures of Kyle Rayner, whether he's Green Lantern or if he's the White Lantern or whatever he is. I just want to see Kyle Rayner featured. And I hope, I keep my fingers crossed that we will see some sort of Kyle Rayner live appearance in Lanterns or the future DCU. So James Gunn, if you're watching this, which you probably are not, but if you come across this one day when you're scrolling and you see this, please consider giving Kyle Rayner a chance in live action, because I think a lot of fans will get a kick out of Kyle Rayner. His personality is tailor-made for live action. So that there you have it. My number one is Kyle Rayner. Like I said, there's no right or wrong in this list because Green Lantern as a character itself is the best character is. So whoever is your number one is the right choice. So let me know what you think. Let me know who you is your top five. Thanks guys for tuning in. Again, this is my top five Green Lanterns of all time, in my opinion. My opinion.